Reset.
Reset. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Elevate series and virtual fireside chat interview with Bev Attfield. We are so delighted to be here today to just continue on this discussion around how to keep our momentum going, even in the midst of COVID-19. So I want to thank Bev for taking time out of her busy schedule. And I want you guys, as you tune in, because we will have a watch party of this later, feel free to post your questions and your thoughts, because really this is a conversation that's much larger than just her and I. So let's begin. First of all, I want to say again, Bev, thank you. I met Bev Attfield as a guest on her podcast, People at Work. And Bev, can you take time to introduce yourself and just explain to the audience what People at Work is all about?
Absolutely. Thanks, Alana. It's great to be here with you in this format. And it's interesting to be on the other side of the interviewing position for a change. So thank you for the opportunity to once again meet with you and continue our collaboration and conversation and friendship that we're developing.
Yes.
So People at Work is a podcast that was started about a year ago. Actually, we're just coming up on our 1 year anniversary, and we've got roughly 50 episodes under our belts. And People at Work is really just that. It's a series of conversations with people who are either at work in the workplace, trying to change and improve the experience that people have at work, as well as people like Alana who are thinking about this, more from a leadership perspective, from an academic perspective, perhaps from a theoretical perspective around what's the science of how people actually perform better at work, and what are some of those human things that we need to be thinking about when we're creating workplaces in the modern workplace. So, and People at Work was something that was started by myself and my colleague Dustin, and we both work for a company called Jostle. And Jostle is the creator of an employee intranet. So we're a tech company here in Vancouver, and our primary product that we produce is a platform that helps employees have less overwhelming work days, so they can feel plugged into what's going on with the business, they can participate in the culture, they can find information, they can be connected to people and the leadership within an organization. So our sort of starting point is trying to make work better for people. And so my job at Jostle, my role is Principal of Workplace Science, and my role is to be thinking about every day, what are things that leaders should be doing to improve the work experience for people? And what are some of the things that we should be thinking about in terms of those levers that we can dial for each unique circumstance within the workplace? Because, there's all these things that happen on a daily basis that are to do with, just running the business.
Wow. Guys, we just had a laughing moment, and I just want to share with you that it's important for us to laugh. And you know what? I'm going to make sure this is included here, this section, what I'm saying, because as we're talking about, the new normal and just adapting and making sure that we can do what's necessary. What was interesting to me today was, in my thoughts, I was like, Alana, you also have to give yourself permission for things not to be perfect, because everyone I know, and I'm sure even in your industry, we have automatically adapted a new normal that we were not anticipating. And so that means that we're all adjusting and super shifting in a way that we have to also give ourselves permission to realize that this kind of shift not only does something mentally, but also in how we're moving forward. It's going to take, we have to be patient with ourselves. I mean, I know we're watching the news and we're seeing, you see, we need this now, we need that now. But at the same time, I'm also recognizing, wait a minute, while we're doing this shift and we're all ready to go, we also have to be sometimes forgiving to ourselves. Like, okay, everything is not going to be perfect. And this is not like an event we should have all arrived at. It's kind of like we're all pacing ourselves. We're trying to pace as fast as we can. But I guess my question to you is, as I think about what you're talking about, what do you think the climate is like in terms of how people are shifting into this new normal? And you can take this question and you can angle it from a personal or professional perspective, because I think that a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question from both. So maybe first from the professional perspective. I was actually reading an interesting article on Medium yesterday, which had 5 or 6 key phases that businesses go through when they transition to being a fully remote workplace. And I guess I can only speak from the context of my business that has recently transitioned to being 100% remote. Mm-hmm. And I know that there are many other businesses out there that the same thing happened to them, where they were an in-office company and suddenly they were obviously in the fortunate position that they could continue to run their business remotely, but nonetheless, they now have to function with all of their people dispersed, mm-hmm. And have had to adapt very quickly. So, I think that's happening to, varying degrees of success for businesses. I think there are probably some technical issues that are happening just in terms of actually connecting and having effective meetings and continuing to relate to one another when you can't actually see each other face to face. So I think that is hard. And one of the interesting points in that Medium article, and I can share that for you, we can share it I don't know if you'll have show notes, but we can share this article because it was actually quite interesting. Level 2 of this sort of transition phase is that you think you're still in the office, but you're operating in a remote setting. So you're trying to do all the things that you used to do as if you were in the office, but it's actually not that effective. So you've really got to change your mindset. This is a new playing field. You've got to change what you do. You've got to optimize what you do and not expect it to be just business as usual in a different kind of setting. So I thought that was actually a really key point. You really do have to acknowledge that this is a change and you need to then respond to the change. And if you can be proactive, even better, and not just reactive. So just, finding ways to actually do things differently that have the similar outcome to if you were in the office with the person. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. One of the things, so I have been teaching remotely for almost 10 years now. And one of the things that we used to always tell our students would be to have this distinct time to do distinct tasks and also to have a set apart room. Sometimes maybe it's in the basement, maybe it's your home office, but kind of letting everyone in the home know, okay, these are my times of please don't interrupt me, because the challenge can be, depending on the layout of where you live, it can be that your office, you have an open studio. And so you're working at your office, but you're cooking chicken, and you can't, you're trying to be professional, but then you're trying to do things at home. So we know that people are struggling with that. And if they have kids at home, that whole dynamic is a shift. So just even acknowledging that this shift is actually happening, as you mentioned, I think is really important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the same holds true on a personal level. I think there are very few people who have not been impacted by COVID-19 and the either on a health and wellness point of view or through a family member or a friend or even just through our lifestyle that's been heavily impacted. I know here in Vancouver, I've been working from home for roughly 3 weeks now, and it really is, physical distancing is the priority, and we're all staying at home for the most part. Life has changed. I don't go running as often as I used to. I don't see friends at the park with my dogs anymore. I don't just on a whim decide to go walk down the street and go and grab some vegan ice cream from the wonderful little shop 1 block away from me. So there's lots of things that have changed, but the great thing is there's lots of things that haven't changed. I still have those friendships. I still have the ability to connect with them. My family is not here with me in Vancouver, but I still am able to talk to them. Some of the things that I love doing with my husband, like watching our favorite TV shows or movies or doing my yoga in the morning or, whatever the case may be, I still get to do those things. So I think it's important to embrace the things that are different, but also celebrate and be grateful for the things that you can continue doing, because I know that there are a lot of people who don't have the ability to work from home, for example. So I'm very grateful that, I can be physically distanced from my coworkers, but still be able to perform my job. So
wow,
I think it's a balance, right?
That's very true. I just want to piggyback on something you mentioned, which was about the ability for, what we have to do to kind of stay inside. And I don't know if anyone watches Trevor Noah, but I thought it was the funniest thing where he was sitting on his couch and he said, well, now that we all have to, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, now that we all have to work from home, this is what he's like, usually you'd get home from work on Friday and you'd go, now it's time for me to relax and watch my favorite shows. He's like, but what do we do now that we're all working at home and the weekend also is also happening? So this is what we do. And he was on his couch and he's like, we're like, wow, the weekend is over. And then he just stood up and he moved over and he's like, oh, it's the weekend, and it's so if you haven't caught it, guys, go watch it. But I said that's so true, because usually that whole idea of leaning in your couch and kind of working and then watching what you love, it's kind of mushing itself together. So that idea of being able to mentally turn off and then also mentally relax. The other thing I wanted to say was the beauty of being at home is spending great time with family and loved ones. But I also can recognize that there's a misnomer that because we're all home, we're available all the time, which also I would say to place some of those boundaries the way you would normally. So when your friends and loved ones want to reach you at a set time, let them know, well, actually, I am working. So I know that, I'm available, but I might not be as available. So it's kind of setting those boundaries, I think, are important. And then, as you mentioned, it's true. There are so many that aren't able to work remotely from home, and they are impacted. And if they are furloughed, I've been thinking, well, the same worry that they have about being potentially let go is probably there. So what can we talk about in terms of kind of calming the nerves, in terms of shifting into this new normal? Because you mentioned, well, now you also had to make the shift from, going into an office to now you work, 100% remotely. So how has that process been for you? And what could you advise other people who may have to go into working remotely, whether it's looking for a new job or just kind of gaining some of those skills?
Yeah, so for me, the company that I work for at Jostle, we've always had quite a flexible work environment in terms of being able to work outside of the office, but not on a consistent basis. So we are not a fully remote workplace ordinarily. So when we made the decision to have all of our staff working remotely, that was a significant shift. And I don't think any of us actually appreciated what a difference that was actually going to be for us, and how much we actually needed to adapt the way that we work with one another. And it's sort of, there's two parts. There's the physical working together and the technical aspects of it. So making sure that you can log into Zoom and you know how to optimize your calls and you're on time for those calls and those sorts of things. But I think there's also this other layer of creating this psychological safety for people who are not physically working in the same space together. And how do you continue to create this environment where people can stay in touch with one another? They're still innovating, they're still being creative, they've still got the ability to feel like they can take risks and test things with one another. And like, that's very much a way of how we work in person in the office. So it's been interesting to see how these last few weeks have unfolded, where we've definitely been aware of the chance that people are just going to go quiet and sort of retreat into themselves and just get busy with their work, but actually not be connected in an emotional way. And that's easy to spot when you're in the office, right? Because you can see if someone is withdrawing or not contributing or not following through. But when people are suddenly all away from the office and they're not having regular FaceTime with anyone, and especially because a lot of our employees would be considered introverts, so they're naturally quiet anyway, right? So I think those are some of the challenges that we've been working on as a leadership team, in terms of making sure our team leaders are connecting with their direct reports on a regular basis, even more so. So our sort of mantra over the last little while has been more communication, not less. If you feel like you're communicating a lot, you're not communicating enough. So have those huddles, be online, be on camera with your direct reports too.
I'm going to interrupt here and ask you to say that again. That was really useful. So can you say that again about the more communication?
Yeah, so more communication, not less. If you think you're communicating a lot, you're not communicating enough. So just double down on the communication. If it means having a morning check-in and an afternoon check-in, it's okay. Like, it's better to have more at the moment than less. And every conversation you have, especially if you have on-camera conversations, you're going to be aware of the nonverbal communication. You're going to be aware of the person's facial expressions. You're going to be aware of their tone. You're going to start to understand how they're actually doing, because I think it takes time for loneliness, isolation, and the depression and the mental wellness issues in something like this to actually start to show up. Like, it's not immediately. It's, in the first week, it's almost like this novelty, right, of working from home, and you're at home with your dogs and you're figuring things out and you can eat whenever you want to. And there's a bit of this novelty of like, oh, this is even kind of fun.
Right.
But that starts to wear off, right? And then it's down to, well, we've still got to run a business and we've still got to help people be productive and be fulfilled and be engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I just kind of want to remind everyone listening that whether you're in a workplace or you're a small business, now, as Bev says, I'm saying it a third time, if you feel like, you've done things traditionally and, your clients are the kinds of clients that only come to your physical space, well, now it's going to be a challenge, but we're going to need you to now take that conversation online. We're going to need you to email your constituents and kind of let them know, okay, even though you might not be coming into the physical space, we're still empathetic. We still want to talk to you. And that might mean that you do understand how to use Zoom or free conference call or any of these tech tools that exist for you to be able to really engage. And on the other side to that, one thing, Bev, that you mentioned, and some organizations and companies had to let people go. And one of the things that my husband was telling me the other day, he said, some couples, you might have one that was bringing in 75% of the income and the other one maybe doing something on the side or whatever. But if that individual loses that income, then that's really scary for that couple. And so, I feel like there are so many things happening. So I liked your idea about finding ways to really engage, whether you're on the job or whether you're in your own business, because we don't know the other external variables that are going to impact the way that person works. So I know, for example, in persistence research, a sense of belonging is super important. And if you don't, some people really love going to the office and being there and, meeting with your colleagues, because that's what makes work fun, especially if your loved ones are away. So my question to you as we kind of wrap up this segment would be, what are some ways people can kind of keep their momentum, outside of work so that it impacts their work? Does that make sense? So in your opinion?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a difficult one because, the obvious answer in the normal setting would be, well, balance your life with activities and habits and exercise and things you love doing. And it's obvious that now we're fairly constrained in what we can do. But there's a lot that you can do that maybe you didn't think of previously that could offer the same balancing out of your life. And what I've been so impressed by is just the amount of resources that have been made available to people. Anything from watching opera live broadcasts to so many of the educational institutions have made their online courses free and available to anybody. And you can learn anything from drawing to knitting to baking to, data science to learning how to code.
And
this is an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I would also say if you have time, I'll make sure to include Bev's. Is the podcast available for anyone to listen to?
Absolutely. Yep. It's available on all the major players. So wherever you get your podcasts, you could find it. So just search People at Work podcast.
Yeah.
And you'll find it. So yeah, and there's tons of great resources in there. If you're into podcasts, there's some really interesting speakers, including Alana. And we talk about all sorts of different topics that are not necessarily just about being at work. It's the human part of being at work is really what we talk about.
Wow. Yes. And I have to say, guys, you will have a treat every time. So if you're having a lunch break, click on this link below and be able to access some of their juicy topics of discussion. And I really want to take this time and thank you, Bev, for this awesome opportunity to connect and to understand how we can all continue to build with this momentum. For those of you who are turning in, if you are a leader, entrepreneur, please feel free to also click on the IWBCC page, where we give you free webinars, resources, tools, workshops, and more to help you to reach your personal and professional goals. Well, Bev, would you like to say anything else?
I just think it's important to be open to change, and this is a time for us to embrace change. And today is the only day we have, and this moment is the only moment we have. So if you have the choice to decide how you respond to this moment, and it's no different from any other moment in your life. So that's what I've been working on and thinking about, and looking for, how do I make this the best moment, even though the conditions do seem really dire, but I have a choice to respond to it. So
wow,
maybe that will help.
Today is the moment, the only moment we really have. Bev Attfield quote. Wow, amazing. Absolutely amazing. I have to agree. Well, thank you so much, Bev, for this conversation. Guys, I would appreciate it. Once you see this, share it, send it to someone who would appreciate it. Good, juicy information here about keeping the momentum. That's it for us. Take care, guys.
Thanks for having me, Alana.